Across the world, there are engines built in the 1980s that refuse to quit. Tractors still start on cold mornings, they power massive fields, and their hour meters are deep into 5 digits. Today's countdown reveals why 7 diesel engines from that era earned legendary status, outlasting changes in technology and economics. But what made their reliability so extraordinary? And why do farmers still seek them out decades later? To answer that, we will look beneath the hoods and uncover which mechanical choices set these classic machines apart. In the mid-1980s, Zetor tractors gained a reputation that reached far beyond their Czech roots. Models like the 5201, 5211, and 7701 diesel became familiar sights across Eastern Europe and in export markets as distant as Africa and South America. These machines stood out not for headline-grabbing horsepower or luxury, but for a kind of mechanical honesty that farmers learned to trust. Each engine was a study in simplicity. They came in 3-cylinder and 4-cylinder layouts, used direct injection diesel and a mechanical fuel pump. Electronics were almost absent, which made field repairs possible with basic tools and a steady hand. Rated between 45 and 75 horsepower, these engines were not built for speed, but for steady, reliable pulling power at low revs. That resulted in fewer gear changes and less strain on both operator and machine. What truly set the Zetor diesels apart was their tolerance for rough conditions. Farmers could run them on variable quality diesel without worry. Cold mornings were met with reliable starts, and fuel economy was consistently praised in farm journals and by owners on rural forums. For many, the appeal was practical: low running costs, easy access to parts, and the ability to keep working even when conditions or budgets were tight. Mechanics valued the straightforward design, which allowed most service jobs to be done in small workshops or right in the field. Decades later, these engines still turn on small farms and in restoration projects. Their legacy is not about headline-grabbing performance, but about engines that kept going when others quit. In a decade defined by economic uncertainty and the need for dependable workhorses, Zetor's mechanical approach proved its worth, earning a quiet and lasting respect among those who depended on them. Farmers looking for a reliable boost in the mid-1980s often turned to the Perkins A 4.236 turbocharged diesel, especially in the Massey Ferguson 698T. This 4-cylinder, 3.9-liter engine delivered about 84 horsepower at 2,200 revolutions per minute. But its reputation was not built on raw numbers. The real strength of the A4.236 turbo lay in its balanced approach to turbocharging. Instead of chasing maximum power, Perkins and Massey Ferguson tuned the turbo for moderate boost, aiming for smooth, steady torque at low engine speeds. That meant the 698T could hold its ground speed through heavy soil, or when pulling mid-sized implements, all without constant gear changes or the risk of overloading the engine. Field work with the 698T often meant long days of tillage, loader work, or transport. Owners came to trust the Perkins turbo for its predictability. It started easily, ran smoothly under load, and rarely surprised operators with sudden failures or complex repairs. As one farmer said, it was not built for attention. It was built for trust. The mechanical fuel system and straightforward engine layout made maintenance simple. Most service jobs could be handled on the farm, and parts were widely available across Europe and in export markets. The conservative turbo setup protected the engine's internals. So many units logged well over 8,000 hours before needing major work. The 698T legacy endures in the number of these tractors still working today, often with their original engines. For many, the Perkins A 4.236 turbo came to symbolize just enough turbo power. Never flashy, always dependable. In the early 1980s, the Allis-Chalmers 8050 arrived on the scene with a presence that could not be ignored. At its heart was a 426 cubic inch inline 6 diesel, a big bore engine that delivered brute strength where it counted most. Farmers working broad, demanding fields needed more than just horsepower. They needed torque that would dig in and hold on, especially when pulling wide plows or heavy grain carts through stubborn soil. The 8050's 426 made its name by doing exactly that, producing strong, steady pull at lower engine speeds. This was a long-stroke design that did not need to scream to deliver results. Instead, it worked with the land, letting operators harness deep reserves of power without constant downshifting or worrying about overstressing the engine. The 8050 was produced from about 1982 through the mid-1980s, a time when Allis-Chalmers was determined to compete head-to-head with the biggest names in American agriculture. Rated in the 140 to 150 PTO horsepower class, the 426 was paired with Allis-Chalmers' own power shift transmission, allowing smooth, clutch-free gear changes even under heavy load. This combination became a favorite among large acreage operators who needed reliability day in and day out. One owner recalled that you could feel the torque when the ground got tough. It just kept pulling, no matter how deep you set the chisel. Durability was more than a selling point. It was a necessity. The 426 engine's robust internals and generous oil and coolant capacities meant that many units logged over 10,000 hours before major work was needed. The engine's reputation for longevity, coupled with the operator comfort of the 8050's cab and the convenience of power shift, made it a standout in a decade crowded with contenders. Today, surviving 8050 tractors are prized by collectors and still see fieldwork on farms that value raw pulling power and mechanical honesty. The legacy of the 426 in the 8050 is a testament to the idea that big displacement, when paired with thoughtful engineering, can outlast trends and deliver season after season. In the late 1970s and throughout the 1980s, Deutz introduced a line of engines that followed a different path than nearly every other major tractor builder. The Deutz 912 family, led by models like the 860 912 WAM and the F-12 abandoned liquid cooling entirely. This AIR-cooled approach would define their reputation for endurance. Instead of radiators, water pumps, and hoses, these engines cooled themselves with air alone. Each cylinder was wrapped in deep, closely spaced fins, and a belt-driven fan forced air across the block and the head. Without coolant that could boil or hoses that could burst, the risk of overheating from a failed water pump or a clogged radiator largely vanished. That design was more than an engineering curiosity. It was a practical answer to farming in places where heat, dust, and long hours were the rule, not the exception. In southern Europe, North Africa, and the Australian outback, Deutz tractors powered by the 912's engines became a common sight. Farmers who worked in harsh, dry climates learned to trust these engines when others struggled. The absence of a radiator meant less maintenance and fewer breakdowns from leaks or cooling system failures. If dust choked the air passages, a quick blast of compressed air could clear the fins and keep the engine running cool. Deutz air-cooled diesels also earned a reputation for fuel efficiency and steady pulling power at low engine speeds. Owners reported strong performance with fewer gear changes and less fuel burned per acre. Mechanics valued the robust, straightforward construction. There was no coolant to monitor and no water pump to rebuild. Stories circulated of Deutz tractors racking up thousands of hours in the field with little more than oil changes and valve adjustments. By the end of the 1980s, the 912 family had proved that radiator-free engines could do more than just survive. They could thrive under conditions that sidelined many water-cooled rivals. The legacy of the Deutz air-cooled design still appears in restoration shops and on working farms, a reminder that sometimes the simplest solution is the one that endures. International Harvester's DT-466 engine arrived at a moment when reliability meant everything to farmers facing tight margins and long working hours. Introduced in the late 1970s and powering models 1086, 1486, and 5088 by the early 1980s, the DT-466 quickly became a mainstay on North American farms. Its reputation was built on more than displacement or horsepower. At its core was a 7.6-liter inline-six, and one design detail set it apart: wet sleeve cylinder construction. That detail made the engine unusually serviceable and resilient. Wet sleeve construction allowed each cylinder to be serviced or replaced individually without removing the entire engine from the tractor. For owners, that was a rare advantage in an era when downtime meant lost income. The ability to remove and replace sleeves, pistons, and rings while the block stayed in place made major repairs simpler and faster. In-frame overhauls became almost routine, with mechanics able to perform rebuilds in the farm workshop. Tractors could reach 10,000, 15,000, or even 20,000 engine hours, with major work done on site. Owner stories from the Midwest recall engines rebuilt on cold winter days, then returned to work for another decade. Parts availability remained strong even after International Harvester's bankruptcy and the transition to Case IH, because the engine's thoughtful design carried forward into later models and into medium-duty trucks. The DT-466's bottom end was built for endurance, with a robust crankshaft and heavy-duty bearings. Its turbocharged setup delivered broad torque at low engine speed, letting operators work heavy soil or haul loads without constantly pushing the engine to its limits. Farmers trusted the DT466 because regular oil and coolant changes kept it going, season after season. The engine family became the backbone of countless restoration projects, with Red Power enthusiasts rescuing 5088s and other models from auction lots and returning them to the field. Today, the DT466 stands as a symbol of practical engineering, a true workhorse designed not just to last, but to be rebuilt and relied upon for generations. John Deere's 6466T turbocharged six-cylinder engine, known to most as the 466, powered the backbone of the company's 40 Series and 50 Series tractors from 1982 to 1988. This engine did not chase headline power figures or the latest engineering trends. Instead, Deere engineers focused on longevity by tuning the 466 for broad, usable torque and steady output at lower engine speeds. Farmers running models such as the 4650 or the 4850 quickly noticed they could pull heavy implements through dense soil without constantly shifting or pushing the engine to its limits. The torque curve was wide and forgiving, letting operators hold a gear and keep working even as conditions changed across a field. That dependable torque made long days in the tractor cab more productive and less fatiguing. Fuel efficiency was another hallmark. Under heavy load, the 466 typically consumed about 8.7 gallons per hour, a figure that compared favorably with competitors in the same horsepower class. By keeping the revolutions per minute down and the boost conservative, Deere avoided the accelerated wear and tear that came from high-strung engines. The result was a power plant that often surpassed 10,000 hours before needing major work, provided routine maintenance was kept up. Mechanics appreciated the straightforward design, with easy access for valve adjustments, injector service, and routine checks. The 466 was not just a single engine. It anchored a family that set the tone for Deere's reputation throughout the 1980s. Its block, crank, and fueling system were robust enough to handle modest increases in power, and yet the company resisted the urge to push limits from the factory. That decision paid off over time. Many of these engines remain in daily use, their hour meters spinning well into a second or third decade. For farmers, the 466 came to represent a simple philosophy. Do not overstress what works. Build an engine to last, and it will keep a farm running through good years and lean ones alike. At the core of the late 1980s tractor revolution stood a partnership that changed the way heavy-duty engines were built for agriculture. In 1983, Consolidated Diesel Corporation, known as CDC, opened in Rocky Mount, North Carolina, as a joint venture between J.Y. Case and Cummins. The collaboration brought together Case's understanding of agricultural demands and Cummins' industrial engine expertise, and it set the stage for a new generation of power plants. The most influential result was the CDC Cummins 8.3-liter turbocharged six-cylinder, an engine that became the backbone of the Case IH Magnum 7100 series. The CDC 8.3 was engineered for endurance from the ground up. Its cast iron block was notably heavy, designed to handle high horsepower and the relentless day-after-day loads that large acreage farms demanded. Weighing more than half a ton, the block provided a stable base for the engine's moving parts, reducing flex and wear during long operating hours. Inside, a forged steel crankshaft and robust connecting rods worked with high-capacity bearings, all selected to survive thousands of hours at full load. What truly set this engine apart was its torque delivery. In the top-of-the-line 7140 Magnum, the 8.3-liter produced around 670 pound-feet of torque at low engine speed. That output allowed operators to pull wide implements through dense soil without constant shifting or risk of stalling. A broad, flat torque curve meant the engine could lug through tough spots while maintaining steady ground speed, a trait that quickly won the trust of large-scale grain and row crop farmers. The CDC engine family was designed with serviceability in mind. Oil and coolant capacities were generous, and access to filters and routine maintenance points was straightforward. The fuel system used a mechanical injection pump tuned for reliable performance and easy adjustment. Those choices reflected a clear philosophy: build an engine that could be worked hard, serviced easily, and trusted to deliver season after season. By the late 1980s, the Magnum series and its CDC 8.3-liter engine had set a new benchmark for durability in high-horsepower tractors. The industrial pedigree of the engine was not just a marketing point, it was a daily reality for farmers who needed a machine that could anchor their operation through unpredictable harvests and long demanding hours. Magnum tractors quickly became a fixture on large farms, not just for their power, but for their ability to keep running through season after season of demanding work. This reputation for reliability came from engines built to handle real farm life. The CDC Cummins 8.3-liter engine at the heart of every 7100 series Magnum was built with a duty cycle that matched the realities of modern agriculture: long days, heavy implements, and little room for downtime. Operators routinely put these engines through primary tillage, planting, heavy transport, and grain cart work during harvest, often running well over 1,000 hours each year. What set the Magnum engine family apart was more than brute force. The cast iron block and four forged internals offered a foundation strong enough to handle continuous full load operation, while the cooling and lubrication systems were sized for maximum endurance. Farmers who kept up with routine oil and filter changes found that the 8.3-liter would log 10,000 hours or more before a major overhaul became necessary. Reports of original Magnums passing 12,000 or even 15,000 hours on the first short block are common in farm forums and service records. Parts support also played a critical role in the Magnum reputation. Because the CDC engine was used across a wide range of Case IH and industrial equipment, replacement components remained easy to source long after the tractors left the showroom. For many owners, that meant a broken water pump or a worn injector rarely sidelined a tractor for long. Mechanics valued the logical layout and service access, which made in-frame repairs practical, even for major jobs. The impact of the Magnum engine family extended beyond just the tractors themselves. The 8.3-liter block became a template for later high-horsepower agricultural and industrial diesels, influencing design standards for durability and serviceability. On farms, the confidence to tackle big acres with a single machine changed expectations. One tractor, one engine, and the parts to keep it running year after year. That is why, decades later, the CDC-powered Magnum remains a benchmark for reliability and long-term value, often found still working the same fields where it first earned its reputation. Even as digital controls and emissions regulations reshape farming, hundreds of 1980s engines are still turning fields across the globe, proof that true reliability never goes out of style. Today, farmers face machines with more sensors than bolts, yet many still trust the engines built to last, not just to impress. Durability is not nostalgia, it is a benchmark. Which engine do you believe still sets the standard? Join the conversation below.